especially around the environment. So the big question we're seeing is how do new projects actually handle all of this? Today, we're going to dig deep into one specific case, Apertum and its compliance with MiCA, that's the markets in crypto assets regulation. And we're going to zoom in on the environmental impact part. We've got this great report. It's called the Apertum and MiCA Compliance Report. Our mission today, break down what MiCA's Article 6 demands and figure out how Apertum is tackling it. What's really interesting here is this idea that Apertum might be inheriting its sustainability score from Avalanche, its parent chain. Think of this as your shortcut to understanding how crypto environmental compliance actually works on the ground.
Yeah, and that inherited sustainability angle is super interesting right now. MiCA itself is, well, it's a massive deal for crypto regulation in Europe, a real landmark. And Article 6 specifically, it really puts the spotlight on these environmental disclosures. It's all about bringing more transparency, more accountability, especially given the criticism crypto's faced on its energy use.
Okay, so let's break it down. MiCA Article 6. What exactly does it require projects to report? The report lays out a few key things, right? Like they need to state their consensus mechanism.
Yep, the type they use, proof of work, proof of stake, etc.
And then the big ones, energy consumption, carbon emissions.
Exactly, the actual quantitative data.
Plus, how much of that energy is renewable versus non-renewable?
Right, the energy mix.
And just their overall policies on environmental sustainability. So for Apertum, running as a subnet, how did they get this info? Is it all on Avalanche?
That's the core of it, really. Apertum isn't standalone. It operates as a subnet on the Avalanche blockchain. Think of it like building a custom lane on an existing highway. It uses Avalanche's security, its infrastructure. And Apertum uses something they call a virtual mining protocol. It's based on proof of stake, POS, which means, importantly, no need for those energy-guzzling physical mining rigs, no ASICs, no GPUs doing heavy computation just for consensus.
So it's validator staking tokens.
Exactly. They stake their existing tokens to secure Apertum's network. It draws its efficiency directly from Avalanche's POS foundation. So the whole design, right from the start, is meant to be energy efficient and sustainable.
Okay, so what about Apertum's own white paper? Does it talk about this? What claims does it make about being green?
It does. The white paper definitely highlights the environmental angle. It talks about using virtual mining, confirms no ASICs or GPUs needed. It states it's based on energy-efficient POS, calls Apertum eco-friendly, low energy demand. It even mentions a deflationary thing where they burn, I think, up to 50% of transaction fees.
Okay, sounds good. But does it give the hard numbers MiCA wants? The energy usage, the carbon footprint figures?
Ah, well, that's the interesting part. No, the white paper makes the claims, sets the intention, but the specific quantitative data MiCA Article 6 requires, it's not actually in the white paper.
Right. So a potential gap for compliance then?
Potentially if Apertum stood alone, but this is exactly where that link to Avalanche becomes so critical. It's how they bridge that gap. Because Apertum is a subnet, it can essentially point to Avalanche's environmental metrics. And that's where the Avalanche CCRI report comes in. It's from 2023. CCRI, that's the Crypto Carbon Ratings Institute. They're an independent third party. They've audited Avalanche's environmental impact, so Apertum gets to leverage that verified data.
Okay, so the CCRI report provides the missing piece, the hard data. Got it. And what does that report actually say? Can you give us some of the numbers, make it a bit more real?
Sure. So for Avalanche's entire main network, the report found an annual electricity use of about 470 milliwatt-hour megawatt hours.
470 milliwatt hours. How much is that, like in everyday terms?
Well, the report puts it nicely. It's roughly the same energy used by only about 44 average U.S. households in a year.
Wow, okay. That's surprisingly low compared to the usual crypto narratives.
It really is. And the CO2 emissions. Around 178 tons per year.
And compared to, say, Bitcoin or Ethereum?
Oh, it's a tiny fraction. The report says Avalanche uses something like 0.000034%. That's percent of Bitcoin's energy.
0.00034%.
Yep.
Tiny.
Yeah, and about 8.2% of Ethereum's energy usage post-merge, presumably.
And the renewable energy part, MiCA asks about that specifically.
Right. The CCRI report estimates that about 16.36% of Avalanche's energy mix comes from renewable sources.
Okay, so 16.36% renewables. They have the number.
Exactly. So now let's connect all this back to those MiCA Article 6 requirements we talked about.
So requirement 1, consensus mechanism.
Check. Apertum disclosed its POS, explained the virtual mining, highlighted the efficiency.
Requirement 2, energy consumption and carbon emissions data, the quantitative stuff.
Check. They provide this via Avalanche's CCRI report. The 470 milliwatt-hour and 178 tons figures, Applicable because Apertum runs on Avalanche.
Requirement 3, renewable energy usage.
Check again. That 16.36% figure from the CCRI report covers it.
And requirement 4, overall environmental policies.
Check. Covered by explaining their POS design, virtual mining, and aligning with Avalanche's broader sustainable infrastructure. So putting it all together, the report's assessment is that Apertum is considered MiCA-compliant for these environmental disclosures.
Okay.
And it really boils down to three main things. One, inheriting Avalanche's verified sustainability profile. Two, its own intrinsically low-impact POS design, no energy-hungry hardware. And three, just the overall conceptual fit with MiCA's goal of transparency. They're providing the data, albeit via the parent chain.
So the core conclusion is, Apertum's mining setup is MiCA compliant because it uses Avalanche's POS system. And by providing Avalanche's verified CCRI data, the energy, the emissions, the renewables ratio, it ticks both the qualitative and the quantitative boxes for MiCA.
That's the argument presented in the report, yes. It satisfies the criteria outlined in Article 6.
It sounds like a really smart strategy, honestly, leaning on the parent chain's heavy lifting for the environmental audit. But I wonder, could that be a weakness down the line? What if Avalanche's numbers change significantly? Or what if regulators say, nope, each subnet needs its own separate report?
That's a really fair question, and definitely something to watch as regulations evolve. The crypto space moves fast, and regulators are still figuring things out, especially with layered solutions like subnets. For now, though, based on the current understanding and the technical reality that subnets do rely directly on the parent chain's consensus and security, which is the main energy draw, this approach seems solid. The report's conclusion holds that this inherited sustainability model works for compliance today.
Okay, so wrapping this up, what's the big picture takeaway for you listening?
Well, it's this fascinating strategy, right? How a project like Apertum, being a subnet, can use its parent chain's avalanches, in this case, established environmental credentials and data, to meet really tough regulations like MiCA. It's almost like inheriting a good credit score instead of building it from zero.
Yeah, it's a practical path to compliance.
This whole inherited sustainability idea for subnets and layer twos, it's a clever solution.
It absolutely is, and it really makes you think, doesn't it? Like, is this going to become the standard playbook for compliance for all these layered blockchain projects? Using the parent chain's eco report. And how will regulators react? Will they accept this long term, or will they push for even more granular reporting, maybe based on specific subnet activity?
Yeah, pushing for even more transparency across the board.
Exactly. And what does this mean for designing future blockchains? Will we see even more focus on building inherently energy-efficient base layers, knowing that subnets might rely on their eco-credentials? Lots to chew on there as this whole space keeps developing.
Definitely. Food for thought.